Tough coalition talks ahead as Ireland's two main centre-right parties look set to form the country's next government.
A revolutionary law enacted in Belgium established fundamental rights for sex workers, giving them labour rights on par with other professions. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz arrived in Ukraine only weeks before he's set to ask his parliament for a vote of no confidence. He is widely expected to lose. Scholz promised the war-torn country an additional aid package worth €650 million at a time of escalating Russian attacks. The German leader's approach to Ukraine has come under criticism, primarily due to his refusal to send powerful cruise missiles to Kyiv, as he argues it would risk Germany becoming directly involved in the conflict. Ukraine's ambassador to Germany called Scholz's refusal to send the weapons a blank check for the Russians. Scholz drew further criticism in November after he spoke on the telephone with Russian President Vladimir Putin, a call Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said undermined international efforts to isolate Russia. Germany, France, the UK and the US have called for de-escalation of violence in Syria after rebels marched on government-controlled areas, reigniting violence in the 13-year-long conflict. In a joint statement, the NATO countries urged the protection of civilians and infrastructure to prevent further displacement and the disruption of humanitarian aid. An alliance of Syrian rebel groups seized control of Aleppo over the weekend, with Syrian President Bashar Assad announcing a subsequent counter-offensive. Syrian state television claimed government forces had killed nearly 1,000 insurgents over the past few days without providing evidence. The surge in violence comes at a time of high political turmoil in the Middle East, with Israel waging war against Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Renewed violence in Syria risks involving more regional powers into the conflict. Both Russia and Turkey have their own interests to protect, with both sides offering support to opposing groups in the country.
Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi makes a visit to the Syrian capital Damascus to meet President Bashar Assad. His visit comes as Syria's army launched counterattacks on Sunday to repel insurgents who've seized control of Aleppo and areas in Idlib in a surprise offensive on Wednesday. Pro-Assad media say government forces had killed nearly 1,000 insurgents over the past 3 days, but no proof was provided to support those claims. The Syrian Civil Defense, a humanitarian group on the ground in opposition-controlled areas, say at least 18 people were killed in Sunday's attacks. They say dozens more were injured as they accuse the Syrian regime of carrying out joint airstrikes with Russian forces.
We are at a very critical situation. With the latest offensive from the rebels, we have seen a renewal of the civil war, and of course this is first and foremost has a negative impact on the civilian population.
Iran's top diplomat is set to visit Ankara on Monday to meet his Turkish counterpart and discuss the escalation. The UN urges all parties involved to prioritize political processes and avoid further destabilizing the region.
Ireland's two main centre-right parties look set to form the country's next government as the final results from the general election trickle in. But both Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil took a reduced vote share and face complex coalition negotiations to put the new administration together. Public broadcaster RTE reports 153 seats in the 174-seat lower house of Parliament have been called. Fianna Fáil have taken 40, with Fine Gael winning 33.
Well, I think there is a very clear route back to government, although it's not fully determined, because a lot will depend on those final seats that I've spoken about.
But what I am very confident about is that my party will have a very significant role to play in the years ahead, and I'm cautiously optimistic and excited about what the weeks ahead hold.
In second place is the left of centre Sinn Féin with 34 seats, but it may struggle to find partners willing to form a coalition with it. Both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have previously said they wouldn't work with the party, citing its leftist policies and historic links with the IRA.
I understand that that vote was for a change in government. And I and we will do everything that we can once the voting's finished and the seats are filled to pursue that goal.
The cost of living and Ireland's housing crisis were dominant topics in the 3-week election campaign. Immigration was also a key issue in the country of 5.4 million people. The results of the election mean Ireland has partly bucked the global trend of incumbents being rejected by disgruntled voters. A fourth consecutive night of protests is underway across Georgia against the government's decision to suspend European Union accession talks. Officials say at least 44 people have been hospitalized in increasingly violent clashes between police and protesters. Prime Minister Irakli Kobehidze has warned that everyone in the country has to obey the law.
მინდა ყველას მოუწოდოს სიმშვიდისა და კანონის დაცვისკენ. ყველას შევახსენებ, რომ ნებისმიერ სამართალდარღვევას კანონის თელი სიმკაცრით გაეცემა პასუხი. პასუხისმგებლობას ვერ გაექცევიან ვერც ის პოლიტიკოსები, რომლებიც თვითონ ოფისებში იმალებიან და მათი ძალადობრივი დაჯგუფებების წევრებს მძიმე საშელისთვის წირავენ.
The unrest began 4 days ago when the government, headed by the populist Georgian Dream Party, announced it was suspending EU accession talks until at least 2028. That was in response to a European Parliament resolution which criticised the 26th of October parliamentary elections, which saw the Georgian Dream re-elected as neither free nor fair. The EU granted Georgia candidate status in December 2023, but put that process on hold earlier this year after the passage of a controversial foreign influence law, widely seen as a blow to democratic freedoms. Meanwhile, Kobehidze has said President Salome Zurabishvili must vacate her post when her mandate ends later this month. The pro-EU head of state has vowed to stay on to support the protesters and says the illegitimate government has no authority to select her successor.
The elections that led to this parliament and then to the government are not legitimate. They are not recognized by anyone. They have not been recognized by the Georgian population in the first place. They have not been recognized by the political forces in the country.
Zurabishvili also said Russia had carried out what she called an electoral war on Georgia and had done the same in recent elections in Romania and Moldova.
Carlos Tavares resigned as Stellantis CEO after nearly 4 years, amid plunging electric vehicle sales and rising competition from Chinese car makers. His exit reflects the struggles faced by legacy car makers in the transition to electric vehicles. Tavares had championed the company's investment aimed at 100% battery electric vehicle sales in Europe by 2030. However, sales fell short of expectations. Stellantis stock dropped in 2024 as Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers surged ahead with competitive pricing and innovation. In a revolutionary move, Belgian sex workers are now able to sign formal employment contracts and gain labour rights on par with other professions. The new law also establishes fundamental rights for sex workers, including the right to refuse clients, choose their practices and stop an act at any moment.
Ik vind dan de voordelen van de nieuwe wet nu zijn dat je gemakkelijker leningen kunt aangaan bij de bank, naar verzekeringen toe ook gemakkelijker kunt verkrijgen en dan het pensioen ook, dat ook voor ons beter gaat zijn. En als je ziek bent ook, dat wij dan ook onze uitkering kunnen krijgen.
Hoping to clamp down on abuse and exploitation within the industry, the law means sex workers will now have access to health insurance, paid leave, maternity benefits, unemployment supports and pensions.
Mijn grootste angst is eigenlijk dat de dames sneller gaan thuis zijn, dus sneller afwezigheid gaan melden, terwijl ze eigenlijk niet echt iets hebben. Dat weten we natuurlijk niet, kunnen we nooit niet zeggen. Ik weet dat dat in alle sectoren gebeurt, ik weet dat, maar ik hoop dat dat hier niet het geval gaat zijn. Ja, dat hoop ik.
Though some countries like Germany or the Netherlands have legalized sex work, none have implemented labour protections as comprehensive as Belgium.
70 films from around 32 countries are being screened at the Marrakech International Film Festival, which opened over the weekend in Morocco. Organizers say though the festival will showcase Oscar contenders, emphasis will be given to emerging directors and films from the Middle East and Africa.
I want to see cinema that provokes me. I want to see cinema that doesn't try to be tidy. I want to see cinema that is taking big risks. I want to see cinema that can be not perfect, but alive, I would say. I don't want to see the cinema of the three-act. And I don't want to see the cinema, or I don't want to champion the cinema that somehow puts me in the same place where I was before seeing it.
Actor Patricia Arquette said she was ready to be wowed.
I think just integrity, truth, a creative vision, moving performances, interesting storytelling, or simple storytelling. You never know, but you know when a movie really grabs you and it teaches you something.
Now in its 21st year, the Moroccan celebration of cinema is entering a new era of maturity.
It's always nice to feel the vibe of new things, and so, I live in a bubble in England or America, and I see things, but when you're working, you don't really see that much. You kind of go into your own sort of hermetically sealed world. So it's like coming to something like this, you get a bit more of a sense and learn a bit more, so that's why I'm here.
The week-long festival, showcasing bold and diverse narratives, opened on Saturday and will come to a close on December 7.
Euronews. The news